North Carolina's Big Laurel country was one of the places where song collectors gathered material for the 1917 publication English Folk Songs from the Southern Appalachians. Filmmaker John Cohen returned to Big Laurel in the 1960s to record some of the same songs as a renewed interest in folk music was emerging. Among those who performed for these song collectors in the late 1910s and again in the 1960s were members of the Wallin clan of Madison County, North Carolina. With their sincere and honest performances, the Wallins and their extended family played a role in preserving the English and American folk song tradition by singing ballads of love, betrayal, murder, and longing in a style that has been the essence of American country and bluegrass. Join me as we highlight members of the Wallin family and some of the songs they helped pass along to a new generation of musicians on this episode of Playing in the Domain, a music history podcast with me, Thena Bloom. The Wallins appeared in North Carolina's Big Laurel region sometime in the 1840s. Earlier generations had come to the American colonies from England, first settling in Rhode Island in the 1600s. Their descendants made their way to other colonies or states depending on the time, with some Wallins ending up in the mountains of North Carolina. According to early U.S. Census records, most men in the region reported their occupation as farmer. Later, logging and mining grew to be major employers, especially in the mid-1800s. Railroads eventually came, helping to link the mountains with the rest of the country and the economy. Yet some places remained remote, with narrow trails that led to hollers and small valleys where past was still present in tradition and music. Musicologist Cecil J. Sharp and his transcriber Maud Carpeles traveled to the Southern Appalachians during the summer of 1916 to visit singers of old-time ballads and love songs. American Olive Dane Campbell helped to coordinate the trip. She had already collected songs in the area and provided her research to Cecil Sharp. She shared a byline with him on the 1917 publication English Folk Songs from the Southern Appalachians. Some of the tunes were of European origin, while others sprung from the lives of the local communities. In the book, the name of the singer, along with the location and date of the performance, appeared at the top of each song. The community was proud of the book they had helped produce and the role they played in the project. The names of several Wallins or their relations were documented as sources in Sharp and Campbell's book. Our last episode featured the song Rain and Snow, also known as Cold Rain and Snow, which was sung by Rosa Rice for song collectors Cecil Sharp and Maud Carpeles on a hot July day in 1916. Rosa Rice was related to the Wallins through her husband Thomas, whose mother was Jane Wallin. Other Wallin relatives noted for their contribution to Sharp and Campbell's book include Mary Sands, who, like Rosa Rice, gave song collectors about 24 songs. One of the ballads sung by Sands was The Damon Lover. Mary's half-brother, Mitchell Wallin, sang several for the project and performed the fiddle tune High March. Many decades later, those same songs and ballads were still being sung by the Wallins' descendants. And folk song enthusiasts, musicians, and scholars headed to the same region, capturing performances on field sound recordings as well as on film. In the late 1960s, filmmaker and musician John Cohen went to Big Laurel to record on film and audio what folklorists in the 1910s had put to paper. A native of New York, John Cohen was a founding member of the string band New Lost City Ramblers in 1958. The band introduced a new generation to string band styles from the 1920s and 30s. This is the group performing How Can a Poor Man Stand Such Times and Live from their 1959 album, Songs from the Depression.
Tell me, how can a poor man stand such times and live?
The Ramblers were part of the folk song revival of the 1960s, influencing musical icon Bob Dylan, among others. John Cohen is said to be the John in the Grateful Dead song Uncle John's Band.
Come hear Uncle John's band by the riverside.
Besides playing and recording himself, Cohen was interested in collecting songs and making field recordings of traditional folk music. One of the places his interest and passion led him was the Southern Appalachians, where he captured members of the Wallin family performing old ballads they'd learned growing up in Big Laurel. The footage was released as End of an Old Song, a short film from 1969. You can see it at folkstreams.net. In the film, Dillard Chandler, a cousin of the Wallins, talks about his life growing up and living in the Appalachians. The documentary contrasts the modern life that existed in the mountains in America at the time against the past of log cabins and story ballads. In End of an Old Song, Chandler, as well as others, can be heard singing in the old ballad style. Some of the field recordings appeared on the album Old Love Songs and Ballads from the Big Laurel, North Carolina, released in 1964 by the Folkways label. It featured several Wallins, such as Cass Wallin, singing Pretty Sorrow.
Like leaving my darling pretty sorrow behind.
Lee Wallin singing Neighbor Girl.
I'll think on the neighbor girl who used to be.
And Brazilla Wallin singing Love Brought Me to Despair.
So love has brought me to despair.
A selection of Chandler's songs, chosen from John Cohen's field recordings, was released on the 1975 album Dillard Chandler, The End of an Old Song. And another collection of ballads performed by Chandler and other Wallins was released in 2005 by Smithsonian Folkways Recordings with the title Dark Holler, Old Love Songs and Ballads. In the film End of an Old Song, husband and wife Lee and Brazilla Wallin appear sitting on the porch of a log cabin. Dillard is there singing. He's a cousin of Brazilla's, whose maiden name was Chandler. In the liner notes from Cohen, Brazilla said in 1916, when Cecil J. Sharp and Maud Carpeles came to collect songs for the publication English Folk Songs from the Southern Appalachians, the locals were suspicious of him at first. They thought he might be from the government to survey the area for construction of a dam to store water for the city of Asheville, North Carolina.
And led him to the stable.
Lee and Brazilla's son, Doug Wallin, who was a ballad singer and fiddler, received a North Carolina Heritage Award in 1989 and a Heritage Fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts in 1990 for his part in preserving traditional ballad singing. The 1995 Smithsonian Folkways album, Family Songs and Stories from the North Carolina Mountains, includes songs performed by Doug and other family members. Singer and skilled banjo player Aubrey Ramsey, also from Big Laurel and a Wallin relation, his mother was Kona Wallin, recorded with his cousin Bayard Ray, a fiddler, as White Lightning on the album File Under Rock, released in 1969. The duo appeared in a scene from the 1971 Western Zachariah, starring a young Don Johnson.
What are you waiting for, Zachariah? Come on, let's go!
Yes, that Don Johnson. More than 10 years before his Miami Vice gig. In the early 1980s, musician and filmmaker Alan Lomax went to Big Laurel and recorded the Wallins once again. He, like Cohen, spent a large part of his life documenting music in many projects. At the home of Deli Chandler Norton, Lomax recorded Deli and her cousin Cass Wallin singing as they sat on Deli's front porch. A patch of corn can be seen growing just to the side of the house. Sheila K. Adams, Deli's great niece, sits on the porch as well, performing songs handed down to her by these same relatives.
Combing back her long yellow hair, saw sweet William and his new maid bride.
Adams, who is credited for sharing her knowledge of traditional songs with students at the James C. Campbell School in Brasstown, North Carolina, carries on the ballad and storytelling tradition of her ancestors. Adams continues to play claw hammer-style banjo and sing the old ballads she grew up hearing. After serving as a teacher in public schools for 17 years, she turned her attention to music and still performs today at music festivals, workshops, and more. She has been celebrated and lauded for her contributions to preserving old-time music, receiving numerous honors, including the National Heritage Fellowship in 2013 from the National Endowment for Arts and the North Carolina Heritage Award in 2016. In Cohen's film End of an Old Song, Brazilla Wallin shared her concerns about the old songs being forgotten and hoped they would be picked up and carried on by someone. Her performance and those of her relatives, including ones from 1916, helped to preserve those traditional songs and musical styles. And never fear, Brazilla, the songs have not been forgotten. At about the 15-minute mark in Cohen's film, Brazilla sings a haunting rendition of A Conversation with Death. Many years later, a highly praised and awarded performance of this song by bluegrass legend Charles Stanley was included on the soundtrack for the Coen Brothers' 2000 movie, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? From Brazilla Wallin's porch to the Hollywood screen, an enduring song and a piece of our American music heritage. I hope you've enjoyed this extra measure highlighting the Wallins and their contribution to preserving American folk music. We encourage you to seek out the performers and music mentioned in this podcast. In fact, right now, while you're thinking about it, I urge you to visit folkstreams.net to search for John Cohen's and other recordings of the Wallins, or search YouTube for one of the many Wallins recordings, or the Alan Lomax film featuring Sheila K. Adams. Thanks for listening. This has been Playing in the Domain, a music history podcast with me, Thena Bloom. Bye, y'all.
This has been a Riverbend Studios production, 2026.
Playing in the domain with Thena.